So this first session is Weaving Our Story, Extending Cultural Heritage. And the moderator is Sky Lucking, who is the project manager for Meteor Studio. I would ask if our first panel can make their way to the stage, and then also I'll turn this time over to Sky. So thank you again.
Here we go. Hello, everyone. Good morning. How's everyone doing today? All right, let's kind of get awake. So move your arms around, kind of get some energy. I'd like to thank Jacob for such a wonderful and inspiring and heartfelt introduction to this amazing conference. As he said, my name is Sky Lucking, and I am the project manager for Meteor Studio, which is an XR development and research lab here at ASU. And all of these wonderful people are XR visionaries and storytellers, and I have been excited all week to have the opportunity to speak with them. So before we begin, of course, you need to know who they are. So there's such a wealth of experience and artistic, creative genius on this panel. So I don't want to miss any details about everything that they have done. So I'm going to just read from my notes, and then if I miss anything, I welcome you to add in as we go. So first, I will start with Catherine, to my left here. Catherine is the co-founder and CTO of Our World, Inc., and South by Southwest 2024 Film Festival winner. We'll talk a little bit about that. Anything else that you would like to include on that?
Hello, okay. No, I just wanted to say South by Southwest EDU 2022 winner and an official selection at 2024 Film Festival.
That's wonderful. Those are the details that I needed. All right, and next we have Aman B. Chavez, and he's with the he's a water program assistant and mentor, participating in the program for close to 20 years since a child.
Yeah.
Wow, very precocious. Aman is well versed in water safety, certified scuba diver certification with, and these are BWRAG.
Yes, that's the BRAG organization, the Big Wave Risk Assessment Group. They help train individuals like watermen in Hawaii how to analyze and calculate the safety risks of big wave days for high competitive surfers.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so you're a first responder training. Most of his life surrounded by water. It is integral to his life. Aman has paddling experience on both the open ocean and in freshwater rivers, both in level 3 rapids and small to overhead surf. Aman has lived in over 5 countries and studied martial arts, gaming, and storytelling as his favorite pastimes. Born in Belize, Central America, Aman is of both, okay, how?
It's just my whole bio there.
Yeah. What is that? Chicano Nahua?
I'm Chicano and Nahuatl as my native ancestry, as well as Mayan on my mom's side, but I don't think that's on there.
Okay. And Aman is starring in the Native Like Water recent film. And
Agua.
Wonderful. And so Native Like Water, it curates experiences through in the indigenous lens. So we can speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And then we have Beth Maloney, who is the executive director of Act One. Act One is a nonprofit that brings children to physical spaces for arts field trips. And then during COVID, they realized the necessity to bring field trips virtually. And now they bring VR arts field trips to Title I schools and other schools. They bring a fleet of headsets, whether there's internet or not. They provide field trips all across the state. And this season, they focused on 3 indigenous artists, one of which is Violet Duncan. And I'm going to have to take a long breath for Violet's bio. This woman is a very busy person and very inspiring. So buckle up, y'all, because it's it's a lot. But it's also like there's nothing that can be left out. There's so much here, and I've met Violet's entire family, and they're just the most lovely people. So Violet Duncan is Plains Cree and Taino from, is that the Kehewin Cree Nation? As an accomplished author, educator, dancer, and storyteller, she has toured both nationally and internationally, sharing her talents and promoting wellness and cultural education across the US, Canada, and Europe. After becoming a mother of 4 and seeing the need for greater Native representation in literature, Violet has authored 3 picture books, I Am Native, When We Dance, and Let's Hoop Dance. Her next children's book, Life is a Dance, will arrive in fall 2025. Very excited for that. Most recently, she released her middle school novel, Buffalo Dreamer, under Nancy Paulson's imprint at Penguin Random House. This exciting work has already received acclaim, making it into the finalist category for the 2024 National Book Award for Young People's Literature. Very, very cool. In her current role as creative director at Young Warriors, Violet is dedicated to cultivating spaces for Indigenous performance and practices with training and experience relevant to mental health. She's also well-versed in traditional protocols and community engagement with Indigenous communities. She is now a featured storyteller at many festivals nationally and internationally. Wonderful. Let's give a round of applause for all of these panelists. So we will have a conversation here and till 10 o'clock, and then if you have questions, we'll have a question and answer session from 10 to 10:15. So keep that in mind. If there's anything that I didn't ask or you're really curious about, there will be time for audience participation and questioning. So I think gosh, this is just like such a buffet of experience and creativity, and I feel like I have a very tiny plate with an hour. So, Catherine, I think if you could maybe start off with describing the app that ourworlds.io has created, and kind of what was the origin story of that, and how you came about it.
Thank you so much. So Our Worlds is an app that you can download now on the Apple App Store. And it was sort of the end result of a chance meeting that I had at a STEM camp that I held at UCSD in 2017. So one of the people who came and brought his son to our STEM camp that summer was a Native American tribal leader from the Pala tribe in San Diego. And he showed me a game that he had hired a developer to make. I don't know if any of you have played Payon, but that's very popular in Southern California. And the app was very cute. It was very engaging. It was the kind of thing that did what apps are supposed to do. You just wanted to play it again and again. But he wanted to sort of recreate it and sort of add graphics and things. And I needed to know what the game was like. So he invited me to a game that was happening on the reservation that summer. And I went with my son. And in no way was the actual experience anything like the game. So it was wonderful. So basically driving for about an hour in the dark to get to the reservation. When we got out, there were just so many sort of dots of fire on the horizon, and we walked towards them, and each one had a game going. And it's very complicated actually, but I'll just try to make it short. So there's 4 people on one side of the fire, 4 people on the other, and you're sort of doing something very complicated with your hands, sort of passing the payon from teammate to teammate, and the other team has to make a call, not only of like who has the payon, but like how you're holding it. And then you're psyching out the other team by singing your traditional songs and telling stories. And you bring everything to it, charisma. And so it was just so fascinating. And we talked about it all night. I mean, basically the idea of how do you preserve this experience for the future? Because the songs are actually, they're sacred. Many of them can't be recorded. And if your family has a song, another family can't sing it. It's very taboo, right? So the idea of, but how do you record the actual physical experience of seeing your elders in community and, sort of getting what you can get from that, right? Or the energy and just, so that's how Our Worlds was created. I'd like to say, I myself am not Native American. My people are indigenous to Southeast Asia in terms of language, I think a lot of the same issues exist. So you have the spoken language, but then the written language is absolutely nothing like the spoken language. So in essence, if people stop speaking it, you're not going to know how it's spoken anymore. You're not going to know the language. So, as a technologist and as a designer, these are really wonderful things to try to solve for. And I think it's the right thing. Because, in our culture today, apps and the internet in general, you're sort of expecting to be able to access all of the information all the time, 24/7. But it's really interesting to think about what sacred knowledge looks like in a technology space. So that's kind of the jumping off point. One of the things you can do with the app is sort of do kind of like a visual land recognition. So it kind of scans your ground. We connect with the Native Lands API. They're friends of ours. You guys know Native Lands, of course. And so anywhere you are, really in the world where Native Lands has tribal geofences, you'll be able to see the name of the tribal nations that are currently inhabiting and have once inhabited those places. And you snap a photo and you put it up onto the app, and it's just a way of re-indigenizing those spaces, our modern spaces. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
That's wonderful to leave re-indigenizing modern spaces. I really like that concept. So how did you get connected with Aman, and what was your artist selection process like? Or how do you connect with these storytellers?
Oh, thanks. Native Like Water, the organization, they're homies in San Diego. So, I was really, one of the very first events that we went to with Dr. Stanley Rodriguez, who is an elder in Kumeyaay Nation in San Diego. He's been wonderful about sharing his knowledge, and so he regularly invites the community, indigenous and non-indigenous, to the Tule Reed harvests and the Tule boat building events. And it's a really wonderful thing to see people reconnecting with nature in that very sort of productive, proactive, creative way. And Native Like Water was at one of them. So I met Mark Chavez, Eamon's dad, really early on, and we've just been talking for years. And so basically, Our Worlds does have some experiences on it, in addition to the land recognition. What I would like to say about the platform is that it can, you have YouTube takes videos, you have Instagram, it takes videos and photos. You have things like Eighth Wall, you can upload augmented reality objects, videos, and things. We do all of that in geolocation with augmented reality objects and language activations. We think it's very, very important to try to find a solution to connect the language in augmented reality, audio files, and so on by geolocation. Like, if we're, here in Autumn Country, like, what if we could just, hear language and just like hear the spoken narration. Like when you look at something, you can hear what it's called. So it's just a way. It's sort of in its infancy. Like the technology is all there. We're looking for connections with partners who are interested in onboarding language. And I can talk more about it, but the way we do it is just this idea that, well, the language does belong to the people. So anyone who would onboard essentially has full access to both upload the language and also delete it if they want it hidden. If they only want it to be accessible to a certain number of people, there are ways that we can do that in the app, like just the gatekeeping with either passwords or devices. And also, if it's only to be spoken within a certain geographic boundary, let's say, we can do that. We can just sort of create a geofence where it appears.
Wonderful. Thank you for that description. My technical mind is kind of on fire with all of those things that you mentioned.
I didn't really answer the question about Native Like Water, but just quickly. Sure. One thing is, we're in, we just got a grant from the Agog Foundation. You may know it. Nani de la Pena is on the board of that, and they sort of believe in what we're doing with the language. It all kind of ties back, I'm sorry. But just the idea that you're able to sort of, there's a map-based interface on the app. How do you sort of populate on the map in the world all the stories, just weaving an indigenous layer on top of our everyday. And and Native Like Water was one of the artists who we funded with this. And so by that, I mean, we have a partnership with Insta360. They got a camera set, they got some funding, and just record in 360 your spaces. So there's 7 other artists on the current grant. But really anyone can upload images, but we're supporting Native Like Water in that way.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the additional information about Native Lake Water. So I wanted to ask Beth, from one founder to a director, if you could kind of describe. I've worked closely with Beth. I was actually a creative director for project manager first, and one of 2 creative directors for Weaving Our Stories, which is the title of season 2 of the Act 1's virtual field trips. And I wanted to know, in the process of just what was your organization's thought process in going into VR field trips as opposed to just the physical field trips that you were providing previously?
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here today. I think to answer that question, think back to the pandemic. And think about me and my brand new job, fresh out of the classroom. I was a classroom teacher for 20 years until I joined Act 1. And the pandemic had shut down our schools and our arts and culture partners. So I'm brand new at my job, and I literally can't do it. Everything was closed. So I was tasked with this new project of, well, how can we still provide arts and culture to our Title I students across Arizona? We knew during the pandemic that they needed that more than ever. We needed that kind of art connection between people because we weren't allowed to be in physical spaces. And doing the job that we do a great job of transporting students in Phoenix and Tucson to in-person field trips. But what about all the kids outside of Phoenix and Tucson? So we really started focusing on lack of arts access as an equity issue. And the way that we saw that we could solve that was building this virtual reality traveling field trip. And Sky did a really great job of kind of describing it. The only thing I would add to it is it is entirely free. We don't charge our students or teachers for any of our services as long as they are a Title I designated school. We do travel throughout the entire state of Arizona, and each experience is about an hour long, and they're customizable. But I mean, that is really how Violet and her family are like the biggest stars in K-12 education right now, because I think more than 10,000 Arizona students have already seen our product since April. We launched in April. So that's pretty amazing. Violet is like a rock star in Arizona school circles.
As she should be. So I definitely want to get the artist's perspective. I mean, you're really central to the story, and it is your story. So Violet, when you were approached as a potential artist, and it's your entire family, and as a mother of 4 who has to have an entire family as like represented, what were some of your thoughts going into, what were your expectations going in, and then when you saw it finally come to fruition, how had those changed or transformed?
Thank you. Hi. Nitigasun Kayask Isigisquel. Hello. As a storyteller, I was actually just going to be me and my husband during the performances, but what kid wants to see a bunch of adults? And so I know that kids love seeing kids, and whenever we can, we're a performing arts group, and we try to go to schools, especially we're super busy during Native American Heritage Month. We want to make sure that accurate representation, accurate history is being shared at these schools, and that we're breaking stereotypes. So having our kids be in this virtual reality for kids that will maybe never meet another Native kid, or maybe they're that only Native kid in that classroom, and to feel that connection and to say, hey, they look like me, and hey, they sound like me, and I didn't know that we do that, and this is what their family looks like. And so going into it, I thought it was just going to be like a performance. And when I seen it and when I saw the reaction, I definitely feel like, okay, this is really cool. If this is the future, I like it. I really like it because of the accuracy that we are doing as a Native family, and that we want to make sure what we're sharing is correct, and that our children are comfortable sharing that, and that I would love to see it go on, because I know as my children get older, they talk about the regalia, and I know that it was more performance for them, and I would love to have them talk more, because kids would love to hear kids talking. So I definitely see like a future in what could happen, and I really loved the program, and I'm really happy. I didn't know that it would reach so many kids, so I'm like a hidden rock star. I had no idea. I'm like, my back is turned kind of rock star. Like, I have no idea. So I think that that makes it even more cool, because like, they just have no idea, and we are still busy. This is not taking from our performances or our presentations. We're still busy during the month of November. This just gives kids an opportunity who would never be able to bring us in as a performance or as a family, and we're reaching them with the same history, dancing, storytelling that we would share in real person, in person.
Actually, I mean, there's so much content and so much creativity, and you are such a multi-talented family. Was it hard to curate your own family's presentation to what you would show?
Well, I actually had to hold us back. Luckily, I grew up like, it's like a family thing. I could say I have like 40 years experience, and that's my age, because I've been growing up with my parents doing performances. They were more social justice theater that went to different communities, because in my community we had a huge suicide pandemic, and so they went in with that mentality to kind of inspire and uplift our young people. And so what we're doing is similar, but instead we're educating, and we're talking about language, we're talking about storytelling. So I think we have it a lot easier. We have to have a lot of fun, where I saw the road that my parents had to go down, and how they had to kind of walk very carefully, tread very softly, and we still use that kind of thinking as we share in our program. And so by holding back, I mean, we had a time limit. We had
Yes.
so many dances, we couldn't do it all. And like I said, we could do so much more. And actually, that's just in my brain. I know that my kids, who I would want to kind of take the lead, because kids talking to kids, I know that they would have just fantastic ideas.
Yeah, as someone who was trying to curate what you had already produced, it was very difficult to. I mean, it was all so wonderful, the storytelling and so it was a process, because it was all so wonderful and colorful, and then also, you're in 3D animated backgrounds, which really added a magic to your stories. So it's just a wonderful presentation. And speaking of, I just wanted to, in case anybody steps out and needs to, we actually have the Act One experience in the other side of across the hall. All three experiences, and I highly recommend, if you have time, to experience that. I wanted to mention that before we moved on. So thank you so much, Violet, for that. Amans, could you tell me a little bit, like, as an artist, what was, oh yeah, so many. So when you said that you had been speaking, and so your father was part of this group that kind of like introduced you to this opportunity, is that right?
Um, so my father is Mark Chavez. He was the founder and director of Native Like Water, and as you mentioned earlier, I've been part of Native Like Water for basically my entire life. It's generational at this point. And recently, in the last few years, we've been tinkering with the idea of putting media for Native Like Water out more and more. And the last 3 years, we've been working on one of our short films that recently got premiered at Skins Fest up in LA.
Okay.
And it's called Hagua, and I was a part of it. I starred in that film as well. And I actually met with Catherine 2 or 3 weeks ago. It wasn't that long ago. We met very recently. And so we got to talking, and I was presented this opportunity because everyone was kind of helping saving the world somewhere else at the time, and I was the one available to come out and talk about this important all these important things. Right now, we're doing a surfboard drive in Michoacan, Mexico, for a lot of the native kids down there. That I'm in the Nahuatl coastal tribe that lives down there. There's a burgeoning surf culture that is very small, but very, very strong, growing because of the adults who learned how to surf by themselves, and now we're trying to take those youth into the surf culture by giving them new boards. And we actually had a board drive, and we got over like 150 boards from amazing people that helped us out. So hopping around all over the place. Being a part of these amazing events and learning all these things about the different communities and the different aspects of Native education in a modern setting, which is what Native Like Water is really about. Back in the day, we actually weren't called Native Like Water. We were called Young Native Scholars. That was back in the early day. That's an antique name right now. But the reason we were called that is because one of the slogans was to indigenize education. I think we said many different versions of that same saying as on this panel already, and is that to turn Native knowledge into something that can be accessible to all the children, not just the kids who have access to people in their lives that can teach them this, but the ones who don't. And the reason we changed our name to Native Like Water is that reconnecting to our ancestral waterways was a big part of what we saw that was missing from a lot of educational systems. That a lot of peoples who were pushed back away from the ocean, away from the rivers, away from their bodies of water, that ancestrally were their ancestral homelands, their ancestral teachings. A lot of their ancestral relics are still hidden in the waterways, and that was our goal, to bring people to the ocean. And it's only recently that with our effort, we've actually have some native surfers that live in San Diego now. Well, one of them actually goes to this alma mater right here. His name is Shaluk. He's studying law here in Phoenix, and I hope to see him someday if he shows up. But he's a good friend of mine from out in San Diego, and he's one of the very few local surfers. The one you see holding the board is actually him in the poster.
Okay.
And so seeing this new generation come up, reconnecting to their ancestral waterways, reconnecting to their ancestral knowledge, that is what we work for. That is what we strive for. That is what makes me proud to be with Native Like Water, even though I've been basically my whole life with it. So it doesn't feel anything new to me. It's like something I've always done. But I'm always proud of it because I like to see my friends who I've known since I was a kid become great leaders in their community. See the new kids who are super, super excited to just be out in the water, be learning. Because when I was a kid, I remember that learning wasn't the cool thing to do. Learning wasn't the cool thing to do. But to want to strive to learn about all these things is what we want to put forward, especially with Native Like Water, and especially with all these new initiatives for technological and merging with Native culture.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So hopefully you can run into your friend somewhere.
Hopefully, he said he'd show up, but he's probably busy doing
maybe
finals.
lunch,
Yeah, he's busy doing finals.
Well, thank you. And this is all just, it's weaving our story, and it's across this panel. It is the name of the second season. But I'm curious how, and we can start with Catherine and then kind of go down the line. How do you decide to construct the story? What process are you using to ensure that, so I think that it's wonderful to be able to tell someone's story, but it's better if you carve the path for people to tell their own stories. And you have to be really sensitive about making sure that these stories are represented if you're telling their story, or making sure that you're sensitive in allowing them to tell their stories. So what were some of the things that you did to ensure that there was this dialogue and sensitivity in getting these stories into a technology that sometimes can be limiting, depending on what you're trying to do?
It's a really great question. You know, I think that we all on this panel share this vision of authenticity. So in order to have authenticity, people do need to tell their own stories, and that's what the platform always was supposed to be. So in the early days, before we made it, it was possible to sort of hand people cameras and have them, you know, sort of tell a 360 story themselves. We would invite people to come to the studio. Our first shoot, or recording, was with 3 tribal leaders and 3 culture bearers. This is in 2020. We brought them to a green screen studio, and we were just sort of trying out this idea of, you know, what if you could preserve the experience of sitting with your elders for future generations? So we recorded the volumetric video of the chiefs, and you know, 3 of those recordings were part of our chiefs showing, which I think he's here, Fleming Larson. Raise your hand. Hello. So he's you know, here at ASU getting his PhD, but amazing immersive director. And just this idea that we don't want the technology to get in the way. So you have the green screen, you have the volumetric cameras, and then you know, my business partner, you know, Kilma, is a wonderful interviewer, and you know, really just kind of pulls out the interview and the story from there. And then, you know, really just a collaborative process. You know, what do you want to, you know, tell people about? What's the most important? And then just, there are many points of collaboration, and I think the styles are different depending on who is your author. So we try to support that as much as we can.
Wonderful, thank you. Aman?
So, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, sure. It was a long-winded question. So I think that there's telling other people's stories or allowing other people or people to tell their own stories. And was there any type of like sensitivities or techniques or ways that you elicited these stories to ensure that it was true to what the person telling the story wanted to say?
Right. So, from experience, I have the most recent one, which is our native surf film, Hagwa, which is kind of it's a recreation of generational storytelling, and it's not very specific. We try to keep it timeless so that the experience wasn't set to a specific location or specific time, so anyone can like understand it from any point in time. And so the narrative is about a grandmother speaking to their great-grandchildren and calling back to their great ancestors on what they hope their future generations could do and be and become and live and thrive. That's the word we like using, is thrive. And when we were going through the filming process, most of the time, we actually found that it was not the people who had trouble with the situation when we were going through it. It was actually the environments. Because we were specifically trying to produce a native surf film specifically, that was like our initial intention. We need surfing, right? And unfortunately, that entire year was the deadest year for waves in the history of anything. Everywhere we went, there was 0 waves. So we had to postpone a lot of stuff, and that's why it actually took like 3 years. But for the most part, the actual storytelling has always been there. It's always been a story. It's an underlying story that's been at the root of every culture, every issue that we've come across, in that we come from a place of nature and culture and nurture, but that nurture has been taken, that nature has been taken, that culture has been taken away, and we hope, we wish, and we want to return to that. We want to return to that state of mind. And a quote I like, well, it's not really a quote, but an idea that I personally like using a lot is that we always talk about reintroducing native species to environments for plant life and animal life and all that. But we're a species as well. Where is the human component of that native species to help curate, to help understand, to help facilitate the growth of an environment, of a natural environment? And so when we were developing the movie, we were trying to show an environment, a culture, and a setting that showed what it was like to reintroduce that native species, the native people, back into an environment where they can thrive. And that was the hardest and easiest, to be honest. It was hard because it was hard to like shape it, but because there wasn't any specific locations that we were shaping it around, it kind of worked better for us. So everyone can see it, everyone can understand it, everyone can learn it. Excuse me. So, and that was pretty much the most difficult thing we had throughout the year. It was just the environment, like how to show that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, pegging your plans on natural phenomenon can be difficult.
Oh, most definitely.
Yes, indeed. Beth, I wanted to just alter my question just a little bit because at Act One, not only are you really need to be conscientious of how the story is presented and being true to the folks in the story, but then you are also gauging the reception of the students and constantly getting feedback. And I was curious about what is Act One's process for ensuring that they've been on the right track with the seasons that they're presenting, with the feedback from teachers and students? What is that process like for you, and how do you guys quantify or qualify what you get back after people have experienced both seasons, season 1 and season 2?
So funny that Sky just changed the question on me, because my answer was going to be like, this is such an easy question for me because it's not my story to tell. But that really goes back to how we do select. As an educator, and I think why they brought me into Act One is I have a very clear understanding of my job as a teacher is to provide mirrors for our students and windows for our students. And that is really something that we're able to do through our virtual reality field trip program. We can provide people, artists that look like our students, and we can provide stories from people that don't look like our students so that they can learn and grow from those people. And that is like truly the privilege of my job, is I do get to provide opportunities for artists to tell their stories directly to our students. And the way that we end up finding the right artists for that is just by listening to our students. The first one, we didn't really have any research or anything to go on, but knowing our Arizona student population, I knew that I was a fairly safe bet to go with a Latinx focus and find some really engaging, powerful artists to tell the stories behind their work, and then kind of take the kids around and show them the work. But after we built that one and started taking it out to schools, of course we post-survey them, right? Because I want to know what they learned, what they took away, what stuck with them, how did they feel about the art and the artists. And then the last question on the survey is an open-ended one. What do you want to learn more about? Is there a location? Is there an artist? Is there a culture? What do you think that we should do for our next season? And first choice, outer space. That's coming hopefully soon. Hopefully soon, cross your fingers for us. But second choice was Indigenous artists. So it was a very like no-brainer decision for me that, cool, that's what we're gonna do for our next season. There was some pushback because our board, I would say they're more an older crowd and a more heavily white crowd. And some of their view is art is old and European. So I had to kind of do a lot of pushing about, well, that is one kind of art, right? But that's not the only kind of art. So I feel like the biggest push I had was actually an internal, as you well know, it was more of an internal push. But then it was actually very easy to select the artists that we did. I feel like if you live in Phoenix and you like go to the Herd as a fan, you know the Duncan family, right? Because they are such strong storytellers, dancers, educators, As an educator, I have learned from them. So that was just like, absolutely, we want the Duncan family. I loved their kids so much that that was just automatic. And then we met this gentleman, Tyrell Tapaha, who is just an amazing 6th generation weaver, and we got to go visit him at his home in the Four Corners and see his sheep. We follow him like sheep to wool to loom. That was just incredible. And then Janelle Stanley telling her story of how she is also a weaver, but the floors that she did in Sky Harbor, the terrazzo floors, were actually a design from her grandmother's brooch. So we like really got to hear these amazing, touching stories that are really resonating with our students straight from the mouths of the artists. And then of course, because I am no expert, we did have Jacob Metters, who is an artist himself and a staff member at ASU and Indigenous, to kind of make sure the overall package was appropriate, it was historically accurate, because we do send out materials for the teachers to use when we go out to the schools too. And then really importantly, the artists had the final say of our final edits. In fact, one gentleman didn't like the music that was selected, so we found like an entirely different music that he actually picked out to go with his chapter. So it was really, I think, driven by the artists themselves, not driven by Act One.
Thank you so much. Violet, I'm going to change the question on you as well. So you also did your husband Tony, he did flute music for 2 of the chapters, which was beautiful. And again, multi-talented family. I was curious your thoughts, and this is kind of a departure, but a lot of people say traditional Native American art. But I was curious your thoughts about Native American art, modern, contemporary, traditional, and how you see that distinction. And then the second question, because I can't just have one question, is given what your experience was with Act One and VR, do you see any additional, like any move toward adding more technology and technologically driven media within your practice or within Native American arts practices?
Okay, thank you.
Long question, sorry.
Those are great. So I'm going to answer, the first one first. I had a great answer, and then
You can answer any kind of question you want.
Okay, the first question, oh my God.
It's about being sensitive to people telling their stories. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So first, I also want to go back to really quickly to authenticity, that it was really important that we be authentic to ourselves. So I get really worried about the umbrella of Native American, because I'm Cree and Taino. My husband is San Carlos Apache, MHA. Unfortunately for our children, they're Plains Cree, they're Taino, they're Mandan, Hidatsa, Rikra, and San Carlos Apache. And they chose at 3 years old to already memorize those, because those were really important. When they introduce themselves, they want to say all of their tribes. And I'm like, you can just say the 2 big ones. And they're like, no, my Lita, my Musham, my grandpa, my grandmother. So I'm like, okay, that's good. And that is the direction that I feel that we're going in. Our young people know that we wear many different tribal hats, ancestry, and they're proud of that. And I hope one day the Native American umbrella will not be there, and we keep using Indigenous, we keep using our own tribe names, and we share directly from our nations. I know that during our performances, if we are going to be sharing a story or a song from a specific tribe outside of ours, we make sure and say that this is from the Anishinaabe, also known as the Ojibwe, known in northeastern Minnesota, southeastern Ontario, Canada. And we make sure they know the the location, the geography, the nation, that it's not ours, and this is how it came to be an intertribal style of dance. So they're really learning that this is not just an umbrella that we put on. This is Native American dance. This is Native American story. No, this one is Cree, this one is Blackfoot, this one is Ojibwe. And so that's kind of where I hope that we'll be heading to in that direction. And then, oh no, I forgot the second question.
Oh, that's okay. I was curious, is that just like how is that documented and how is that just an oral tradition or is it written down or is there a reference that people can know what dance or what story or what which goes with what?
See, we're in a really tricky time right now because I know as a storyteller, when I am gifted a story, there's an exchange that happens before. We don't just hear a story and we're like, oh, that one's really funny. I'm going to take that and I'm going to share that. There's an exchange. Sometimes there's money, tobacco, sage, or sweetgrass. Sometimes there's a blanket because you're given that story. And in my community, they say if you hear a story and you can't quite remember it, that's because you weren't given that story. That story was not meant to be given to you because there wasn't an exchange that happened. And so people are like, tell me that story again. I forget how it goes. And I'm like, why? Why do you want to know the story exactly? And it's usually adults that will ask. But definitely kids, we understand, well, my community, it's a gift. The young people are already giving us a gift for just being there. They're like a sacred tobacco or a sacred energy, being so close to their time with Creator that anything that we want to give them, dance, storytelling, they've already given us the gift of being in our audience and being in our company, that we just kind of gift it back to them. So hanging out with kids and sharing with kids is already reciprocity that's happening. And so that's easy to share. And if they remember it, that's good because that's what we want. It's when we start dealing with adults, that's when it changes and we need to understand protocol and tradition. And so definitely sharing on this platform felt really good to me. I know that it's going to be complicated as we kind of venture out more and how long, but like you said, some of the stories can't be shared outside of some geography. With my community, some of the stories can't be shared outside of seasons. And so we made sure to not share those stories, and that's kind of the best that we could do. But the really funny stories are told in the winter time, so I was like, I have to hold back from those ones. But yeah, I think we're in a really unique time.
Thank you. So I think you recently wrote a young adult novel, Buffalo Dreamer. So and that's a modern novel written now. And I'm curious, like, what is your opinion on these umbrellas of traditional versus contemporary versus like how do you see as a Native artist? What is that? How do you think people should distinguish that, or should they?
Yeah, so let me start from like the beginning of my picture books. The reason why I started writing picture books is because we had a baby and we wanted to share with that baby books. Literature has always been on the forefront. Literacy is really important to me. And when we went looking for baby books, there was no books that looked like our family. And I don't mean just like a brown family. I mean with like an auntie or a grandparent or with a res dog. It was always like mom, dad, two kids. And of course, they didn't look like us or their house didn't look like us. And when we looked for Native stories, we were put in the past. We were in teepees. We were often told from a non-Native perspective. So it was like that Native American, or the story was strange. And I was like, who wrote this? And I would find out that, again, it was a non-Native writer taking a traditional story and trying to fit the mold of like beginning, middle, end kind of a story. So I'm like, this is not good. So that's why I started writing children's books. But then my kids grew up, and we actually found out about the 215 unmarked graves in Kelowna, BC at the residential school. And it was right after the pandemic and we were dealing with that. And I had to share with my kids what residential school is. What does that mean? They found out that my dad attended school and they were heartbroken as well, knowing that, what, Musham went? And he like walks by and they're like, why wouldn't you tell us that? Why? We thought this was 100 years ago. And that's how Buffalo Dreamer was born. I was sharing with my children that history in the most kid-friendly way without kind of sugarcoating it, because I wanted them to know the history. And so that's how we do our performances. We make sure that we are being historically correct, authentically correct, that we feel good. We always talk to our kids that think about it like there's an elder from your community that's out there. And will they be like, And if they are, then you're not sharing correctly. And that's how me and my husband do performances. We act like there is the most knowledgeable elder out there from our community, and we have to represent them. And that's how we work in our books, in our performances, and at home.
I also use the what would grandma think? Use that on my kids too. So we have about 10 minutes before question time, and I always like to ask people, what do you want? Genie out of a bottle. What would you like to see happen? And this could be very personal, something close to you, or it could be very broad, worldwide. So we'll start with you. What would you like to see happen? And I just kind of want to leave it open for you.
Thanks. That's a great question. And I guess the idea that technology can facilitate a different kind of storytelling, the idea that you could find this technology and find your own way to use it. I mean, for example, like Instagram, of course, as you know, started off as like a beer tasting app or something, and then people just ended up saying, oh well, the photographs and the filters are actually really cool, so let's just turn it into something else. Well, you have the 360 cameras, and one of the ideas behind it was always I mean, it's amazing just to be able to do this, but then ultimately as a narrative device, we don't really have eyes in the back of our heads. So those are just two sort of things swimming around in this big soup of my brain. But but the vision really has always been for our worlds, well, if you are creating a platform so that indigenous stories can be told in a good way and in the correct way, that means there are going to be sort of, I wouldn't call them limits, but there are sort of times and places for these stories to be told, right? So if everyone had one of these cameras, and more and more that's happening, everyone has the phones for sure, and then now with the little sort of portable 360 cameras, I mean, they're 8K. They're just like a few $100s, right? So when we work with our indigenous partners, our storytellers, what if you had this technology, would you want people to know about your environment? I mean, really, that camera is best suited for that. And it's just about our spaces. And the idea of the land and the language being really kind of central to the conversation about sovereignty. If you had this, what land would you choose to share? And what would you share about the land? So weaving that fabric into a platform, whether it's our worlds or any other platform. I mean, how amazing would it be if when you went into Google, for example, and Google Maps, you're not just sort of seeing the Google car robot view of things, but you're actually seeing an indigenous overlay, because I mean we're all on indigenous lands, and just I think the idea that we can do that with the technology is very exciting, and the language also. So the language piece we're building out, but that is of course nice that it would appear in this layer, of technology wherever you go. Like you just open the phone or open different apps and things, and you just sort of see it. And that's kind of a proposal for how it could be, perhaps physically. Like we'll have more street names, we'll have more place names. So that's ultimately what I would like to see. And just bringing it back to what Native Like Water does, so amazing, is that they're an intertribal organization. So just imagine, like one of their surf camps, for example, took kids from the tip of Baja all the way to Malibu, surfing the waters, surfing the indigenous waters, reconnecting with the elders in the area, the participants, the young participants in the surf camp, what that land meant to them, what the waters are, what there is to know. So those kinds of, that kind of knowledge is just so critical to sort of knowing or feeling one's place in the world, and that's what I would like to see. And that's why we're so drawn to the amazing work that they do.
Thank you so much. Mama?
Well, you said it quite well. One of the things that I personally want for the education for the future is to have more of a true story in just every educational surface. Whether that be in regular schools, public schools, private schools, to have the true story be more readily available. That saying that history is written by the victor? And that often isn't the whole story. That's usually maybe a fraction of what actually went on. And throughout my years, especially as the subject of education, getting educated, throughout my life, especially during my formative years, knowing what I learned from public school, private school, and from native school, um, I realized that a lot of the story has been hidden. And not because of, I don't want to say malice, because it probably was at one time malice, but it's been hidden because it's been lost. It's been hidden so well that it got lost. And now that we want to find it, it's kind of hard to find it. And the people who don't want to find it are the people who know where it's at. And so we have this situation where the people want to know, the children want to know, the adults want to know, and we're struggling to find the true history. Some of the stories are very sad, very upsetting, but I want to know because we can't build foundations without any foundations, right? I mean, sounds kind of circular, but in order to build the future, we must have a foundation in the past, and a lot of our past has been missing. And so for me, I really want children, especially in this modern age of the internet, where education is a fingertips away. Learning is so as easy as searching up the name of the hadron boson particle or whatever. Like that's just stuff you can just look up. um, and so I want that to be accessible. I want kids to come up to me and ask me, what is the name of this great warrior who fought in this great war that I'd never heard of, but my aunt told me about, and I could be like, oh, let's look it up, and look it up, and it's just like, oh, now we know the true history. We just look at it to each other. My brother, he's only 10, and he's wickedly smart. And noticed that with a lot of children of his generation, they grow up with a lot of technology and also grow up with a lot of influence. And they're influenced very easily because they are sponges. They are creatures of learning from their environment. Luckily, he has a very good environment that helps him learn the smart way, and not just by social media and learning everything like that. But unfortunately, a lot of children don't have that environment. And he comes to me and we talk about science, we talk about culture, we talk about like I had a conversation with him for like an hour about consciousness and how robots might have consciousness if it evolves further enough. And I didn't have that when I was a kid. I would have not have. I was not that kid, and so that to me shows me that we're at that time where it's imperative that we have the knowledge to give to them because they want it. We're evolving faster than we think with this modern age, and the children want to learn. They want to know. They want to understand. And what I really want is to offer that knowledge. Let them understand. Let them know. Let them learn, because they want to, and I want to. We just have to find it. That's what I want.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I just want to say what Eamon said. Like that was so beautiful. I guess really if I had my magic wand and could do one thing right now, it would definitely focus on decolonizing education. I think that is a real problem, particularly in the state of Arizona. Not to get on my own soapbox here, but now is the time for education allies to continue pushing back because we are kind of at a crossroads right now and we can't let up because we do have the vision of the future, a better future through our students, through our education system, but we can't give up right now. It's time to push harder than ever.
Absolutely. I agree. Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be communicated.
Because it's uncomfortable,
Because
but it
it's
needs to be communicated.
Exactly. Yes, that's a better way to say it. Violet?
If I had a magic wand to do this, I would say it would be awesome. First of all, if I had the knowledge of the people who were editing it, or if there was an indigenous person in there editing it and they could relay to me and say, hey, do you know with the story we could do XYZ, and to make it more whatever it needs to be, because I saw it and I'm like, oh, I wish I did this, I wish I did that, but I don't have that knowledge. I'm not an expert in that field. So, I mean, I would love to see more of what we can do, but then I probably have to come to ASU and go to class and learn all that stuff.
Not
But-
necessarily.
but I'm very, very grateful for the experience. I loved bringing my knowledge and my family to this opportunity. It definitely blew their minds on what it would look like because we didn't know. And at one point, I'm like, I should have put on shoes because we're sitting on the couch and I didn't know we'd see feet. So there was like, there's parts where I'm like, oh, but then what we're saying here is pretty important. I don't want to take this out. So just stuff like that, that I wish that we knew, and to make it like, I like the stories that were like find your own adventure kind of things, and I could totally see that happening, that especially if there's an outer space element, there's a zillion native indigenous stories about the star world, and to kind of bring those two worlds together of exploration and traditional indigenous history, and about how we can kind of even cross, we learn about Greek gods up there. Well, did we hear about Trickster from the Cree? He's up there too, and stuff like that. I think that would be really cool to kind of combine those efforts and pave the way like that. That's my magic wand moment.
Oh, wonderful. Well, speaking of magic, this has been a magical conversation for me. Let's give a round of applause to our panel. So we're right at 10 o'clock, and I wanted to open up for questions from the audience. So don't be shy. Does anyone have any comments or questions? And I think I can, this is the active part of my job here. I can, so anything that sparked your interest about the technology or their stories?
So tell me about the experiences that we're going to have over here from both sets of groups.
Thank you. Yes. Okay.
So we have 2 experiences. So we have 3 headsets. 2 of them are showing an immersive reality experience about the Choctaw Code Talkers in World War I. So many of you, of course, know the story. We worked with Choctaw Nation on this, and it was one of the first volumetric recordings that we did. And so really, I guess the sort of 15-second summary would be, you know, in 3.5 minutes, we show the last 2 weeks of World War I, where the Choctaw Code Talkers were, their leader had discovered that they were speaking Choctaw amongst themselves, and knew that in order to gain an advantage, they had to kind of find a way to confound the Germans and be able to convey strategy across, you know. So in 3.5 minutes, if you are going to tell the story in an immersive format, are you able to, you know, like a lot of the things that you were talking about, Beth, just like invite inquiry. Like that's what this medium is so amazing for. It's just you see it, you see all the details, and you have more questions. So it's the starting point for a curriculum that we're piloting in schools right now. And the second, so take a look at it. And the second thing that we're showing is a trailer for Hagwa, the movie that we were talking about with Eamon, that Native Like Waters created.
If you come, I think in the turquoise room, you'll be able to see our 3 chapters. We do divide our stories into chapters because we know, of course, children's brains learn better that way. They take in information better. And at the end of each chapter, we take off the headsets and engage the students in conversation about what they saw and what they learned. So please come check it out.
Thank you so much. Does any other questions? Oh, all right. Someone brave in the back. I'll get my steps in. Sounds good.
Hi, thank you so much for such an interesting discussion. So I'm a professor here at ASU, and we always tend to think about sort of this education journey as kind of these discrete packets, right? We divide things to K through 12, higher ed, and then grad school, or even like sort of general public learning. But so much of sort of success and even entry into this space is dependent on all the experiences before. And so I'm just kind of wondering from your perspective, like what can places like ASU, right, these higher ed places where we actually depend on, right, like successes early on to be able to have students enter, right, and want to continue their journey within this sort of environment, and how to have successes in this place that then sort of translates into the successes that Jacob was talking about early, in his intro, like later in life, like all of these are connected. So I'd be really interested to hear like what you think like a place like ASU that's committed to this could actually do in terms of advancing the equity earlier on.
I wish we had the magic wand again to kind of fix that. I guess from my perspective as a pre-K through 12th grade teacher for the longest chunk of my life, it does start then. And to me, the key is literacy, because if you can't read or you don't enjoy reading, that definitely hurts you in the long run. So to me, this is totally a bias to elementary education, but it's all about that 3rd grade reading. If you are not reading by 3rd grade, you're going to have problems. I mean, we know that. So to me, investing in our earliest learners holds the key to everything. Instead of investing in our prisons, we should really be investing in our early learners. We are one of the only states that doesn't have mandatory full day K, mandatory preschool, paid preschool. We have a long way that we could go in that department that absolutely correlates to success in later life at ASU or other places.
It's so true. Yeah, I mean, the literacy component is absolutely critical. In regards to what universities like ASU could do, and first of all, congratulations on just an amazing institution. I was at the Mix exhibition last night, and just so much great, so many resources have been put into this medium, which is amazing. We have had amazing conversations with some universities like San Jose and Santa Clara. And what's really cool about what they're doing in some of the programs there, Kai Lukoff is someone we've had some amazing conversations with at Santa Clara, and they are working with their communities, their indigenous communities, and kind of doing some of the things that, we would like to do also. I mean, we're doing currently in our app, like how do you indigenize the campus of Santa Clara? So they are working with their community and also their sort of immersive technology group at the university. Their collaboration has resulted in, when you can go take a QR tour of the university, and you can just sort of see, what some of the tools and the shelters and, the sort of, everyday life pieces look like on the campus in augmented reality. And the conversation there has been like, you can onboard some of that onto our platform, and how can we serve universities? But that's one model that I saw that was really very exciting. San Jose, I think, does something similar. So I think that's really cool. Just like, how do you combine those worlds? And kind of like create a fabric for younger students, like something fun for them to do. Like, this is an indigenous space. This is, really connect with it, like, vibe with it, So I think that the earlier that starts, the better.
Thank you. Those are both excellent suggestions. Oh, we have another in the back.
I'll just answer the
Oh.
online question as well. It says, where's the best place to purchase Violet's children's books? Yay.
Yeah.
So the middle grade book, Buffalo Dreamer, can be found at your local bookstore or Changing Hands, Palabras, or even at the Heard Museum. And my children's book that I have that I self-published, I Am Native, it's available on my website, w.violetduncan.com. And then just quickly about the opportunity and equity, besides opportunity, bringing Indigenous artists out that are experts in their field, valuing a PhD as much as Indigenous knowledge. I think that seeing that cross as somebody who's a traditionalist, who has a wealth of information, and bringing that kind of person in as well and valuing them just as much as you would somebody who had finished their doctorate program, I think that would be really huge in post-secondary.
You can also get your book at the Labriola Center, which is our native library right across the way, FYI. So have a library card, you can check it out. But Skukdash, good day. My name is Alex Soto. I'm originally from the Tohono O'odham Nation. I'm the director of our native library, the Labriola Center here at ASU. And for the sake of this question, I also know I'm the principal investigator on an Andrew W. Mellon Foundation grant we received here at ASU that's more or less co-addressing and exploring how to do cultural heritage from a culturally appropriate perspective, especially with institutions. And so my question is, this is in relation to more so the non-film based work you all done. It seems like the VR, the AR, the kind of digital environments you're creating and as a librarian here, so bear with me if my nerdy technical questions, is that as far as what I'm seeing or what I've heard here, it's more on the user end, which is great for our students because, you know, sometimes our young people don't want to learn the old way, and we have to find ways to meet them where they're at, right? So I guess my question, other than the user experience, on the back end, the storage side of it, in terms of where does all this data go, in terms of that digital environment you're creating with VR, I'm curious, what does that look like for your user agreements? What does that look like with tribal nations in terms of working with, say, tribal archivists, tribal libraries to be able to find ways where they're the stewards of that information? I understand tribal communities are sometimes not there yet. And I only mentioned that because in our Mellon grant, that's kind of what we're doing for ASU, is that maybe we're a place to store this information until the capacity is built out. So that said, I'm curious with your the work you're doing, what does that look like? Because I think a lot of folks see this work and they all want to jump on board, but they're not asking or reading the fine print of storage, access, culturally appropriate protocols, I guess where MOUs come into place, because that's what we're doing with folks in my community right now. So that's my question. So.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I have opinions about this too. So it's really wonderful that you're working so mindfully with the communities and creating MOUs. You know, we wanted to tackle this issue really early on. So as a Native American founded and majority Native American owned company, you know, indigenous led, the idea of where the information goes has always been a part of the equation. So, you know, we maintain our own dedicated servers, and if someone is onboarding, so for example in Kumeyaay Nation, onboarding some of the language, you will want to have it's basically, you know, a cPanel account. So it's your account. If you want to turn on the you know, sort of backups, you can. You know, the backups all live on your own server. And if you wanted to just nuke all of the information, you can. It's your server. You just do whatever you want with it. And there are MOUs in place. You know, we were not going to, you know, sell or share or, you know, any of these data. That's very important. And so, you know, what we have shown to communities who we're talking with to sort of preserve the language, I mean, you have a crisis happening, right? In some cases, like 6, 5, 10 speakers left. So there is this component of, well, let's, you know, sit with the elder, let's record. Where does that go? So in some cases, you know, we do have it on the server, you know, but then, you know, we also have a solution. You know, we are talking and you know, have done a little bit of work with Michael Running Wolf, and their solution is, you know, just put it all in a box. You know, it's not connected to the internet, and then you kind of connect to it with a LAN in your community, and then it's just something physical, and it's something that's in your bounds. It's not, you know, on a server across the country. So those are two of the ways that we've dealt with it. Does that answer your question, or do you have another?
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're just saying it out loud, because I've been in many spaces like this where maybe that's not asked, and I know especially on the educator side, like you mentioned, we want to educate our students, and there's this urgency to plug into a lot of what you're doing, which is in many ways great for all the various reasons you shared, but then it gets into the non-cool, sexy part of the work, and that's why I just wanted to at least put that out there, because basically your last point is what we're doing now with a district on my res, where they said put it in a box. We want it on servers. We do not want it on the cloud, because it gets into a risk assessment of that. And I'm glad that they, after going through workshops, training sessions, basically consent, that's what they want to do. Flip side of it is, if they want it on the cloud, that's their choice, but here's the risk assessment, and oh, by the way, here's some tribal code IP law that could be helpful in that. So thank you for putting that out there, because I think some folks who are not as nerdy as us don't know those questions.
No, absolutely. And then also, I think that some of our partners have been very savvy about what they share and what they don't share. I mean, you know, there's enough that you can share that is not sacred, you know, and other things. So, and then by all means put that on, but then there are always going to be things that you don't want in those spaces, and that's fine. Yeah. One of the things too is, you know, for example, we recently had an experience. We have these murals in downtown San Diego. There are QR codes. You can sort of access language and these different experiences. You know, I was mentioning before the bird singing, the songs that go with Payon. They can't be shared. So what he did was he wrote a song just for the mural. So, you know, I mean, there are ways to sort of connect to those spaces without, you know, sort of going against, you know, the idea of how the knowledge should be shared, actually.
Thank you. And that's a really interesting question that I think we should explore further as technical artists who are building these things out. So thank you for that question. I think I'd like to end off with Violet. That was someone's looking out for you, wanting to buy your book. But what I'd like is, unless there's other questions, I don't want to leave space. Oh, okay. Cheryl.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. At Cheryl Bly in Ishia. My day shkijin ishlen twits on the bashes chin twitch in the shachero dash nala. Chinli do bake about zana a auto age shike. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. My name is Cheryl Bly. I am the Director of Operations at the Mix Center. I just wanted to give kudos to Sky and my colleagues, if you can stand. Robert Lekemwa is Meteor Studios Director. Stephanie Tomlin is Industry Relations. And Fleming is one of the PhD students there within Meteor Studios. But I do wanted to express an invitation to each and every one of you to, with everything that you heard here on the panel today, these are leading pioneers that you have access to here at ASU. So please come on over to the Mix Center, tour Meteor Studios. We have Dreamscape Pod up and going now. And so come over, take a tour if you haven't been there. So I want to extend the invitation to everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thanks for the shout out. Yeah, and just to follow up, Meteor Studio is a production studio and lab. We also have a Mesh Guild program that really wants to facilitate the creation of XR experiences for people who don't know how to get started. So you don't have to go to ASU and build it yourself. We have things that help. We have grant funded, nonprofit funded, corporate funded. We help faculty. So that is definitely something that we want to have open to the community. And so that was my plug for the evening. What I'd like to do is, what is the call to action for your organization? Do you take donations? Is there something that we can do as a community to support your groups? So maybe we'll end with that, and then I invite people to go next door. Go ahead.
We want to start on the other end of the row this time. Sorry, I'm hogging all the.
Okay, my call to action is get my book, but it's also bring Indigenous voices into everything that you're thinking of. I'm really trying to have a study lesson plan for teachers so that they don't just look and zero in on November for the only time to bring Indigenous voices and history and perspective. There is Christmas time. We have Native Christmas books that are available. There is where we celebrate Arizona's birthday on February 14. We can talk about the Indigenous people that are from this land and the canals that have been here for thousands of years, and it wasn't because of non-native people that did them. It was the Tana Atam Nation. And there's so many times to bring in an Indigenous voice and perspective and music and dance into education and post-secondary, that if we could just kind of see what we're teaching and then what's the Indigenous perspective or what's missing on the Indigenous history song side. And there's so many experts in their field in every city, especially in the colleges. That's all that I say is consider Indigenous perspective in your teaching.
Thank you. And it's violetduncan.com.
Yes.
Buffalo Dreamer. Okay. That.
At Act One, we are a nonprofit. We are entirely grant and donation funded, if you ever feel so inclined. But definitely check out our website, our in-person field trip opportunities, as well as our VR and our Culture Pass program. If you haven't seen our Culture Pass program in your libraries, that is for everyone to check out 2 free passes to arts and culture places around your area, and it's entirely free in your local libraries. And you can see everything at act1az.org.
Thank you. Ahmad?
Yes, much like your organization, we are also a nonprofit. Native Like Water is fully funded by the donations and goodwill of the Native tribes that we work in tandem with. And you can actually go onto our website at nativelikewater.com, and you can look at how to donate as well as how to volunteer for any of our several different programs that we do throughout the year. We are always having smaller events all the time, and you can keep up to date with those kinds of things on our Instagram as well, at Native Like Water Instagram as well. Keep up to date with our smaller events, but our larger events throughout the year, we always look for people to help volunteer with those, especially when we're wrangling 35 kids and learning about the natural sciences. It's always helpful to have an extra pair of hands, especially when we have some great people join us who can help educate them as well. So at nativelikewater.com to check out for donations, as well as volunteer options, as well as whatever we're doing throughout the year, and on our Instagram at Native Like Water as well. Will help greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine.
Thanks. We are not a nonprofit. We're a for-profit benefit company, so we're a B Corp, and that was the decision made by my business partner Kilma. From leadership, from his sort of entrepreneurship, the biggest statement of sovereignty, he said, is just to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. So we sell things like the platform access and so on for universities and schools who want to try to do sort of what we're doing for the community. So and we that said, we do have a donate button on the site, but most importantly, but spread the word. So we have an app, download the app, and then we're on Instagram. So Instagram, the account is ourworlds.xr, and our website is ourworlds.io. Thanks.
Thank you. Could we give a round of applause to this group? Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. And back to Jacob. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So thank you, Sky, as well. And let's give them one more round of applause for Beth, Violet, Catherine, Aman, and Sky. Very, very interesting and cutting edge, and certainly cutting edge always comes with certain risks. And so I appreciate Alex's question in terms of protection of data, particularly when it comes to the sacred. And so